The radio crackled once, then went dead right as the cruiser slid sideways and disappeared down the embankment. The deputy never screamed. She just stopped answering. Rain flattened the road into black glass. Headlights smeared into long white wounds across the asphalt. A pickup slowed, then rolled past the warning cones like they weren't there. The driver saw the flash of blue below the guardrail, the brief stutter of emergency lights, trying to breathe through the storm. He didn't pull over at first. Most people wouldn't. This stretch of Route 9 cut through forest and shale, a place locals avoided after dark. But the pickup braked anyway. Tires hissed. An older man leaned forward, squinting through the windshield, jaw tight as if the night had called his name, and he hadn't answered fast enough. Daniel Mercer stepped out into the rain. It soaked his jacket in seconds. The wind shoved at his shoulders like it wanted him gone. He moved anyway. Boots slipping on wet leaves down the embankment where the cruiser lay on its side. Roof-crushed engine ticking hot. A woman lay half-pinned by the door uniform, darkened by blood. Her eyes were open. That was the shock. They were open and searching, sharp, even as her breath rattled. "Don't," she said barely, sound a word torn into pieces by the rain. "Don't call it in." Daniel froze. The phone was already in his hand. No bars. He lowered it slowly, palms out, a gesture learned somewhere else long ago. "I'm here," he said. His voice surprised him. Calm. Too calm. "I'm not going anywhere," she swallowed, throat working. "They're listening," she whispered. "They always listen." A pair of headlights crept along the ridge road, above, slowed, then vanished. The deputy's gaze followed them, until her eyes fluttered. "If you make noise," she said, "they'll finish it." Daniel knelt, ignoring the cold, biting through denim. He took in the scene in quick cuts the way some men read a room. Blood pooling where it shouldn't. The angle of her leg. The smell of fuel. He didn't touch her yet. He waited for her breathing to settle just a fraction. "What's your name, Claire?" she said. "Claire Hudson." A pause. "You're not EMS." "No," he said. "I'm a delivery driver." She almost smiled. Almost. Figures. Up on the road, a gust tore a branch loose. It cracked against the cruiser's roof. Claire flinched, fingers digging into Daniel's sleeve with surprising strength. "They staged it," she said. "Radio jammed. Dispatch thinks I cleared the stop." "I didn't." Daniel nodded, like this made sense, like roads lied all the time and radios took sides. He slid his jacket off and pressed it against her side, firm exactly where the blood kept coming. Her breath hitched. He held the pressure steady, counting with his thumb, because counting kept the hands honest. 1, 2, 3. "Who's they?" he asked. She laughed, a short, broken sound. "Everybody wants it simple," she said. "It's not a cartel. It's a company." Her eyes searched his face. "They move money like water. They move people like boxes." The cruiser popped metal, cooling a sharp sound that cut the night. Daniel shifted his weight to shield her body. Instinct moving before the mind caught up. He felt the old pull, then the one he'd buried under routines and grocery lists and school drop-offs. He pushed it down. Above them the road went quiet. No sirens, no help, just rain. "Stay with me," he said. "We'll wait this out." She shook her head. "You won't." Her gaze hardened. "They don't miss. Not twice." Daniel thought of the kitchen clock blinking 12:58 in the morning when he'd left the house. Thought of his son asleep on the couch because he'd promised to be home early and hadn't been. Thought of the letter folded in his wallet, creased to softness, never opened all the way. He pressed harder. "Listen to me," he said. "I know how to keep someone alive." Her eyes narrowed just a fraction. "That's not a delivery driver thing to say." A figure appeared on the ridge. Not a cop. A man with a hood pulled low, hand to his ear. Posture relaxed in a way that didn't belong to the storm. He stopped, watched. Daniel felt the weight of that look, even without seeing the eyes. He didn't wave. He didn't shout. He shifted his body again, blocking the view, making himself small and unimportant. The figure lingered, then turned away. Claire exhaled a sound like glass breaking. "You see," she whispered, "they're patient." Daniel didn't answer. He slid his hand from her side long enough to tear a strip from his shirt, knotting it with practiced fingers, replacing pressure without losing it. Her breathing steadied a hair. He leaned close so she could hear him over the rain. "I'm going to move you," he said. "Slow. When I say." She tried to protest. He waited. He always waited for the moment the fight went out of the eyes. Then he moved inch by inch, easing her free, keeping her spine straight, listening to the sounds her body made, like they were instructions. The cruiser groaned. Fuel dripped steady, unforgiving. "Daniel," she said suddenly. She hadn't asked his name. "If you walk away from this, I won't blame you." He paused. Above them, thunder rolled distant and heavy, like something waking up. "I'm not walking away," he said. "I'm just not calling it in yet." They reached a hollow under the trees, shadowed and damp. Daniel set her down against a trunk, hands never leaving her. He scanned the dark senses, stretching cataloguing. He hated that his body knew how to do this, hated that it felt right. Claire watched him with a new expression now. Not gratitude. Assessment. "You're hiding," she said. "From what?" He didn't answer. He pulled a small flashlight from his pocket, shielded it with his palm, used it sparingly. The wound was bad. Bad in ways that didn't belong to a simple crash. He met her eyes. "Claire," he said, "if I do what I think I can do, some people are going to be angry." She managed a nod. "They already are." A low hum drifted through the rain. Not thunder. Engines. More than one. Daniel killed the light and listened. The hum grew, then split vehicles, separating, circling the area above. He felt the shape of it, the net closing without haste. "Daniel," Claire whispered. "That's them." He pressed his forehead to hers for a second, a private moment stolen from the storm. "Okay," he said. The word settled something inside him. "Then we do this my way." Up on the road, a door opened. Voices carried muffled but confident men who knew the ground and expected obedience. Daniel's phone vibrated once, then again, a message trying to push through. He ignored it. He adjusted the makeshift bandage, checked her pulse with 2 fingers, steady now, stubborn. "You trust me?" he asked. She closed her eyes. I don't have a choice. Daniel looked toward the ridge, rain streaking his vision, and stood. To anyone watching, he was just a tired man in a wet jacket, blocking a view, buying time. To the storm, he was another obstacle. To himself, he was something he'd sworn never to be again. The first thing Daniel did was make himself invisible. He stepped away from the tree, slow and deliberate boots placed where the mud wouldn't suck or splash. Body angled so anyone watching from the ridge would see movement without purpose. A man alone in the rain. No uniform. No urgency. The kind of figure people dismiss before they finish looking. Behind him, Claire's breathing rasped, then steadied when his shadow passed back over her. She kept her eyes closed, not sleeping, listening the way cops do when they're hurt, and pretending not to be. The voices above grew clearer, not shouting, not rushed. Men who had done this before didn't waste words. Daniel caught fragments carried by the wind. Check the shoulder. Watch the tree line. She didn't crawl far. A beam of light cut through the rain, white and surgical, sweeping the embankment. It paused on the overturned cruiser, lingered, then moved on. Daniel let his shoulders sag just enough to sell exhaustion. He raised his hands halfway, palms out, the universal language of harmless. Hey, he called up, voice thin in the weather. You guys with the county. The light snapped toward him. For a second it blinded him, washed the world down to sound and rain and his own heartbeat. He didn't flinch. He waited. A man stepped into view at the guardrail. Hood up, jacket too clean for the storm. Who are you? The man asked. Calm. Curious. Name's Daniel, he said. Truck stalled back there. Saw the lights? He nodded toward the wreck like it was the whole story. Didn't see anybody else. The man considered this. Another shape appeared beside him, broader, restless. The second man leaned over the rail, scanning the trees below. You didn't touch anything, he said. Not a question. Daniel shook his head. Wouldn't know where to start. The broader man smiled. Not with his mouth. Good. The beam swept again lower this time, closer to where Claire lay, hidden by shadow and rain. Daniel took one step, then another, putting himself squarely in the light. You want help pushing my truck, he said. I can't get a signal. The first man's eyes narrowed. He studied Daniel's hands, the way they hung loose but ready. County's handling it, he said. Roads closed. You should head home. Daniel nodded. Soon as it starts. The broader man laughed quietly. You're funny. A third voice crackled over a radio. Nothing down here, it said. Let's wrap it. The light lifted. The men turned away. Boots crunching gravel. Engines idled, then shifted one, pulling off another, circling wider. The hum retreated. Not gone, just repositioned. Daniel waited until the rain swallowed their sound. Then he moved fast. He was back at Claire's side in seconds, hands already working. She opened her eyes when he touched her shoulder. They're not leaving, she whispered. I know, he said. We are. He slid an arm under her shoulders, careful tested her weight. She winced but didn't cry out. He liked that about her. He hated that he noticed. Daniel, she said. Breath shallow. There's a service road. Old. Rangers use it. Cuts north. He nodded. How far too far? He almost smiled. That's okay. He lifted her fireman's carry adjusted for her injuries, his body remembering how to distribute weight, how to keep balance on bad ground. Rain soaked them both. Mud sucked at his boots. He moved anyway, angling away from the ridge toward thicker trees where light didn't travel well. His lungs burned. He welcomed it. Pain meant focus. They hadn't gone 50 yards when a shout rang out behind them. Hey! Daniel didn't stop. He shifted his grip and ran. A beam flashed through the trees, bouncing frantic now. Another shout. A footstep slipped. A curse. Daniel cut left, then right, putting trees between them and the light. He counted his steps, breath matching stride, the world narrowing to the sound of Claire's breathing against his chest. A shot cracked the night. Not aimed, a warning. Bark exploded off a trunk ahead of them. Daniel dropped shielded Claire with his body as they slid into a shallow ravine. The shot echoed, then was swallowed by rain. Don't! Claire gasped. They'll hear you. I'm not making noise, he said. He wasn't lying. His breathing had gone quiet, controlled. He pressed his hand to her side, felt warmth, felt it spread. Not good. He tore open the kit he'd brought, hands steady, working by touch. Pressure, elevation. By time. Footsteps skidded nearby. A flashlight stabbed down into the ravine, jittery now. She's here, someone said. I see blood. Daniel waited for the angle to change. When it did, he moved, grabbing a rock, throwing it hard into the trees on the opposite side. It cracked against a trunk, loud, deliberate. The light swung. The footsteps followed. Daniel rose and ran again, up and out, moving on instinct and memory, taking paths that weren't paths. The service road appeared like a gift and a curse, a strip of gravel cutting through the dark. He crossed it without slowing and plunged back into cover. They chased him. He could hear it now, the rhythm of pursuit men spread out, confident. He angled downhill toward water. Sound died near water. Light bent wrong. The creek was swollen, angry brown with runoff. Daniel stepped into it without hesitation, cold biting through denim boots filling. He moved upstream against the current, each step an argument with gravity. He counted again. 1, 2, 3. He left the creek where the bank rose and the trees grew close where the rain fell loudest. The service road curved back on itself a quarter-mile north. He knew that because he'd driven it once years ago on a day he didn't like to remember. He reached it again, breath tearing at his chest, and didn't stop this time. He laid Claire down in the gravel, shielded by brush, and worked. Stay with me, he said. Look at me. She did. Her eyes were glassy now, fear giving way to something else. You're not a delivery driver, she said. He pressed. Later. Sirens wailed in the distance. Real ones this time. County. State. The men in the trees shouted voices, sharp plans collapsing. Engines revved, then retreated. Claire laughed weakly. You called it in. Daniel shook his head. He held up his phone. A single bar blinked to life. A message pushed through time, stamped 12:47 in the morning. He hadn't sent it. He'd set it to send itself if he didn't cancel. "I don't like leaving things to chance," he said. Red and blue lights cut through the rain, closer now, louder, indisputable. Claire closed her eyes, relief crashing over her face. "They're going to ask who you are," she murmured. Daniel looked down at his hands, slick with rain and blood. He thought of his son's shoes by the door, thought of promises. "I'll tell them," he said. "Enough." The cruisers skidded to a stop. Doors slammed. Voices shouted orders. Hands took Claire from him, careful practiced. A medic met his eyes, surprised by what he saw there. "How long?" she asked. "Long enough," Daniel said. A man in a raincoat approached, older posture, rigid with authority. He took in the scene, the overturned cruiser in the distance, the blood, the kit at Daniel's feet. "Sir," he said, "I'm going to need you to stay right here." Daniel nodded. He was already still. As they loaded Claire into the ambulance, she reached out, fingers brushing his sleeve. "Daniel," she said. He leaned close. "They didn't plan on you." He met her gaze, rain streaking down his face. "Neither did I." The hospital corridor smelled like disinfectant and wet wool. Daniel sat on a plastic chair with his jacket folded on his knees, hands resting flat as if to prove they weren't shaking. They were. He kept them still anyway. Across the hall, a television murmured late-night news to no one. The sound swallowed by the hum of vents and the squeak of gurney wheels rolling past. A trooper stood 10 feet away, pretending to read his phone. He looked up every time Daniel shifted. Daniel didn't mind. He'd learned long ago that watching back only invited questions. A man in a rain-darkened coat approached, footsteps, measured face lined by years of decisions that never left him. "Daniel Mercer," he said, not asking. "I'm Captain Lawrence Pike, State Police." Daniel nodded. "She make it?" Pike considered him for a beat, then softened just enough. "She's alive. Surgery bought her time. Doctors say she's stubborn." He paused. "They also say whoever treated her knew exactly what not to do." Daniel looked at the floor. "I stayed inside the lines." "You did," Pike said. "That's part of what's bothering my people." The trooper by the wall straightened. Pike waved him off without looking. "Walk with me." They moved down the corridor past a glass window, where a nurse charted with quick hands. Pike stopped near a vending machine that hummed louder than it should have. "We pulled the radio logs," he said. "Her cruiser lost signal where it went down." "That's not new. What is new is the interference pattern. Someone brought equipment." Daniel said nothing. Pike continued. "We also found a service road cut we didn't know was being used anymore. Tire marks fresh. Professional?" "Sounds like you've got a problem," Daniel said. Pike smiled thinly. "We do. And you ran straight through it." A door opened down the hall. A woman stepped out in scrub's mask, dangling at her neck, eyes tired but sharp. She clocked Daniel and paused. "He's the one," she asked Pike. Pike nodded. "Dr. Reynolds." She studied Daniel, head tilting. "You kept her pressure where it needed to be," she said. "Didn't try to be a hero. That's rare." Daniel met her gaze. "I just kept her alive." Reynolds's mouth twitched. "That's the trick. She left without another word. Pike watched her go. "Most people in your position either freeze or cross lines," he said. "You did neither." Daniel shrugged. "You called me down here to compliment." Pike's eyes hardened. "No. I called you down here because the men who chased you tonight didn't care if a deputy lived or died, and because you anticipated things my people missed." They reached a small conference room. Pike closed the door, then gestured to a chair. Daniel didn't sit. Pike noted it, filed it away. "We ran your name," Pike said. "Delivery driver. Volunteer responder. Clean record." He tapped a folder. Before that, Daniel stared at the wall. He could see the reflection of his face in the glass, older than he felt, younger than he should have been. Before that, he said, "Doesn't matter." Pike leaned back. "It does when it explains why you moved like you did." Silence stretched. The vending machine coughed. Somewhere, a phone rang and stopped. Daniel thought of his son's face when he'd left that evening, the way he'd waved without looking up from his book. He exhaled slowly. "I was a medic," he said. "A long time ago." Pike waited. Daniel didn't add more. Pike nodded, as if he'd expected this and more. "We don't need your history," Pike said. "We need your eyes." Daniel laughed once short. "I don't work for you, I know," Pike said. "And I'm not asking you to." The door opened. A woman in plain clothes stepped in. Hair pulled back, rain still darkening her collar. "Captain," she said. "She's awake." Daniel's head snapped up. Pike watched him carefully. "Detective Nora Hale." Pike said. "She's been chasing this group for months." Hale's eyes flicked to Daniel. Curious. Calculating. "She asked for him," Hale said. Pike raised an eyebrow. "She did." Hale nodded. "Specifically. By name." Daniel swallowed. "I'll go if you want," he said to Pike. "Or I'll sit right here." Pike studied him, then opened the door. 2 minutes. The ICU room was dim machines, blinking steady, soft beeps marking time. Claire lay pale against white sheets, hair plastered back, eyes half-lidded. She smiled when she saw him, a small thing that cost her. "You look worse," she whispered. Daniel stepped closer. "You look better." She winced. "Liar." Her gaze sharpened. "They talked to you." "Some," he said. "They'll talk more," she said. "They don't know who they're up against." Daniel shook his head. "They'll figure it out." She grabbed his sleeve grip, weak but insistent. "No," she said. "They won't. Not unless you show them." Pike stood in the doorway, face unreadable. Hale leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching the exchange like it was evidence. Claire breathed shallow. "They aren't a cartel," she said. "They're contractors. Logistics. Security. They wear badges when it helps, and take them off when it doesn't." Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's not my problem." "It is when they start killing cops who get in the way," Hale said quietly. Claire closed her eyes, then opened them again. "I saw the manifests," she said. "Medical shipments, relief supplies, Money moves through places nobody audits. She looked at Daniel. You know those places. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Pike stepped forward. We're not asking you to chase anyone, he said. We're asking you to help us not lose people while we do. Daniel looked at Claire, at the machines, at the thin line of her pulse on the monitor. He thought of nights when he'd made the same calculation and hated himself for how fast it came. I have a kid, he said. He needs me home. Claire nodded. So do theirs, she said. The room went quiet. Hale shifted her weight. Pike exhaled. We can set boundaries, Pike said. Consultation, training, no field work. Daniel considered. It really considered. It felt the pull and the fear tangled together. If I say no, he said, you'll do it anyway. Yes, Pike said, but slower. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, something had settled. I'll talk, he said. I won't chase. Pike extended his hand. Daniel hesitated, then shook it. The grip was firm, respectful. Hale watched, filing everything away. Later in the parking lot, rain thinning to mist. Daniel sat in his truck and stared at the dashboard clock blinking 1:07 in the morning. His phone buzzed. A message from home. You promised. He typed back with numb fingers. On my way. As he pulled out lights flashing in the distance, Daniel caught his reflection in the rear-view mirror. Not a hero. Not a savior. Just a man who had stepped into the rain and found that the storm had been waiting for him. Morning came grey and thin, like it wasn't sure it belonged. Daniel parked 2 blocks from the station habit, more than caution, and walked the rest of the way with his hands in his pockets. The building squatted low against the hill's concrete, and brick flags snapping in a leftover wind. Inside, the smell changed from coffee to paper to old oil. People looked up. Some nodded. Most didn't know why they recognized him yet, only that something about the way he moved made them stop talking. Captain Pike met him near the briefing room, jacket off now, sleeves rolled. You sleep? Pike asked. Enough, Daniel said. It wasn't a lie. He'd closed his eyes. That counted. They entered together. 20 chairs, 18 filled. Men and women in uniforms sat forward, elbows on knees, the posture of people used to being told bad news. Detective Hale leaned against the back wall. Notebook closed, watching faces. A map glowed on the screen at the front, roads, traced in white rivers like veins. Pike didn't introduce Daniel. He didn't need to. This is a working session, Pike said. No speeches. Daniel stood near the map, hands loose. He felt the room measure him. He let it. What you're dealing with isn't loud, he said. It doesn't kick doors. It doesn't wear colors. It waits. A murmur ran through the room. Someone scoffed. Daniel ignored it. He pointed to the map without touching it. Relief corridors, he said. Medical resupply routes. Places nobody likes to slow down because slowing down looks like obstruction. He glanced back. You've been hit near those routes. Hale spoke up. We've got shell companies, she said. Security contractors with overlapping boards. Paper everywhere. Daniel nodded. Paper hides bodies, he said. Bodies hide money. A hand went up. Older deputy mustache, graying. You saying this is federal, I'm saying it wants to be, Daniel said. And that's the danger. When everyone thinks someone else owns it. He stepped back. Pike took the floor. Boundaries, Pike said. Mr. Mercer consults. He does not deploy. He does not touch a badge. A few looks shifted. Acceptance, not comfort. Daniel caught Hale's eye. She gave a slight nod. They broke into smaller groups. Daniel moved between them, listening more than talking. He corrected a diagram. Hare shook his head. There. He asked questions that forced pauses. Where do you stage medics? How long until air? Who decides when to pull back? Each answer exposed a gap. Not incompetence. Habit. At noon, Pike called it. We'll reconvene tomorrow, he said. Eat something. Daniel stepped outside. The sky had lifted just enough to show blue trying to break through. He checked his phone. A missed call from home. 2 messages. He called back. I'm on my way, he said when his son answered. You said that last night, the boy said. Not angry, just precise. I know, Daniel said. I'm sorry. A pause. Did you help the lady? The boy asked. Daniel closed his eyes. Yeah. Okay, the boy said. Drive safe. Daniel sat in his truck longer than necessary. He didn't start it until his hands stopped wanting to do something else. That afternoon, Hale knocked on his window as he pulled back into the station lot. We got a hit, she said. Warehouse lease, night activity. Cameras go dark for 7 minutes at a time. Daniel followed her inside. The map was back up. Different pins now. Pike listened while Hale talked. Daniel watched the timing. 7 minutes, he said. That's a drill. Drill for what Pike asked. For when things go wrong, Daniel said. Enough time to move a person. Not enough to move freight. Hale frowned. You think they're planning something? I think they already planned it, Daniel said. And you're reacting on their schedule. The room tightened. Pike leaned forward. We can't rush, he said. I'm not asking you to, Daniel said. I'm asking you to not be predictable. They argued in low voices. Not about whether, about how. Boundaries held. Decisions stayed with Pike. Daniel said what he saw, and stopped when he was told. It felt strange and necessary at the same time. Near evening, a nurse wheeled Claire past the glass at the end of the hall, pale but upright IV pole clicking. She saw Daniel and lifted a hand. He lifted his back. It was enough. The call came just after sunset. Not from dispatch. From a number Daniel didn't recognize. He let it ring once, twice, then answered. Daniel Mercer. A man said, voice smooth, practiced. You don't know me. I know enough, Daniel said. The man chuckled. You helped our mutual friend last night. Brave. A pause. Inconvenient. Daniel said nothing. You're being invited into a conversation that isn't yours. The man continued. It would be unfortunate if your family paid the tuition. Daniel felt the old heat rise the thing he controlled by naming it. You picked the wrong person, he said. Everyone says that, the man replied. They're always wrong. The line went dead. Daniel didn't tell Pike right away. He walked outside, air cold now, and stood where the cameras couldn't see his face. He thought of the service road, the creek, the shot in the rain. He thought of the word inconvenient. He went back inside. Pike listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, Pike nodded once. "That confirms it," he said. "We're moving." "Within your rules," Daniel said. "Within my rules," Pike agreed. They worked late. Plans layered over plans. Fail-safes named and tested. Medics staged where Daniel said. Extraction routes doubled. When they were done, Hale drove Daniel home, headlights cutting tunnels through the dark. "You didn't have to come back," she said. "I did," Daniel said. "Just not the way they think." At home, the house was quiet, except for the refrigerator's hum. His son slept on the couch again, blanket half off. Daniel covered him, careful not to wake him, then stood there longer than necessary. Later alone, Daniel sat at the table and unfolded the letter he'd kept folded for years. He read it without rushing this time. When he finished, he folded it again, precise, and placed it back where it belonged. Outside, a car passed slow, then sped up. Daniel watched the taillights fade. Tomorrow would be loud. Tonight was for keeping promises, even the ones that hurt. The warehouse sat low against the river, corrugated metal, stained the color of old rain lights off, except for a single bulb over the loading dock that flickered like it was tired of pretending. Daniel watched it from the back seat of the unmarked SUV window, cracked just enough to smell damp earth and diesel. He hadn't slept. Not really. His body knew this hour too well. Captain Pike leaned forward from the front passenger seat, radio pressed to his shoulder. "Teams are staged," he said quietly. "No lights, no sirens. We wait for confirmation." Daniel nodded, eyes fixed on the dark line where the building met the trees. "They'll move early," he said. "Before shift change. Before anyone expects trouble." Detective Hale glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "You're sure?" Daniel didn't look at her. "They don't like witnesses. They like control." Across the river, a barge horn sounded long and hollow. The single dock light cut out. Total dark. "Here we go," Hale murmured. The radio came alive in whispers. Footsteps, doors. The soft metallic cough of a loading gate being lifted by hand instead of hydraulics. Daniel leaned forward despite himself, fingers curling into the seat. Pike noticed. "You're riding this out," he said. "That's the deal." "I know," Daniel said. He meant it. It didn't make the stillness easier. A shape moved near the dock, then another. 2 men, then 3. No uniforms, no rush. They worked like people who believed nobody was watching. Daniel tracked them by sound, by the way the dark bent around them. "They'll bring someone out," he said, "not cargo." Seconds stretched, then a muffled voice, not shouting, pleading, a woman's voice, fear pressed flat to keep from spilling. Hale's jaw tightened. "We go," she said. Pike hesitated, the weight of command heavy in his shoulders. "Confirm," he said into the radio. "Visual." A flashlight blinked once, twice, then went dark again. Confirmed, a voice whispered. 1 female, hands bound. Pike exhaled. "Move." The night fractured. Boots hit gravel. Commands snapped sharp and clean. The dock erupted in light flood lamps, igniting silhouettes, freezing mid-step. Police Hale shouted, "On the ground." The men bolted. Of course they did. Daniel's pulse hammered as shots cracked, controlled, aimed not to kill, but to stop. A body went down hard. Another stumbled, caught, dragged back into the light. The woman screamed, then went quiet, as hands reached her, careful now. From inside the warehouse came a deeper sound. Heavy doors, slamming engines turning over. Pike swore. "They're running the back." Daniel leaned forward again. "They'll split," he said. "One decoy, one real exit." Which Pike demanded. Daniel closed his eyes for half a second, listening to memory instead of sound. "Left," he said. "Always left." Pike trusted him. He shouldn't have. He did anyway. Team 3, cut left. Now. The radio answered with breathless confirmation. The SUV rocked as Hale shifted ready, waiting. Sirens stayed silent. This was still supposed to be clean. Then everything went wrong. A sharp crack echoed from the trees closer than it should have been. Not police, not controlled. Panic rippled through the radios. "Officer down!" Someone shouted. Leg hit. Daniel's hands moved before permission did. He was out of the SUV and running rain slicking the ground, heart roaring. Pike shouted his name. Daniel didn't slow. The injured officer lay twisted near the tree line, blood pumping bright and fast. Daniel dropped beside him, voice low, steady. "Look at me," he said. "Breathe with me." He cut fabric, pressed, elevated, his world narrowing to skin and pulse and time. The officer sobbed once, then focused. "Stay," Daniel ordered. "Stay." Shots cracked again, farther now. The decoy. Daniel heard it and knew. He finished the bandage hard and ugly, then stood. Pike was there in seconds, fury and relief colliding in his eyes. "You broke the line," he said. Daniel met his gaze. So did they. Pike hesitated, then turned away, barking orders. The night swallowed him. Minutes later it was over. Suspects cuffed. The woman safe, wrapped in a blanket, shaking. One officer on a stretcher alive. No bodies under sheets. That mattered. Claire arrived in a wheelchair, face pale, eyes fierce. She took in the scene, the lights, the faces, and then she saw Daniel standing in the rain, hands stained dark. "You came," she said. Daniel shook his head. "I talked," he said. They listened. She smiled, tired and sharp. "That's more dangerous." By dawn, the warehouse was sealed, evidence-tagged, cameras flashing. News vans lined the road like vultures. Pike pulled Daniel aside, out of the noise. "You saved a life tonight," Pike said. "And you crossed a line." Daniel nodded. Both can be true. Pike studied him for a long moment. "They won't stop," he said. "Not because of this. Because of you." Daniel thought of the phone call, the word inconvenient. He felt the weight of it settle familiar and unwelcome. "Then you should finish it," he said. "Without me." Pike shook his head. "We finish it because of you," he said. "Because you reminded my people what preparation looks like." They stood there as the sun lifted pale and indifferent. Hale approached notebook already full. "The woman's name is Sarah Collins," she said. "Accountant." She started asking questions. She looked at Daniel. She'd be dead without you. Daniel felt the praise slide off him. He watched the river, swollen and brown, carrying everything away. "Get her somewhere safe," he said. "We will," Hale said. "You too." Later at home, Daniel washed his hands until the water ran clear and his skin burned. His son sat at the table, cereal forgotten, eyes wide. "I saw it on the news," he said. "They said a civilian helped." Daniel knelt in front of him level. "I helped because I knew how he said, not because I wanted to." His son considered this, then nodded satisfied in a way only children could be. "Are you in trouble?" Daniel smiled, small and honest. Maybe he said, "But I did the right thing." That night, long after the calls stopped and the house settled, Daniel stood at the window and watched the road. Somewhere out there, men who thought themselves untouchable were learning a new word for loss. He didn't feel triumph. He felt responsibility. And he knew with a clarity that hurt that this story wasn't finished yet. The backlash didn't come with sirens. It arrived quietly, folded into paperwork and phone calls that never quite said what they meant. Daniel felt it the next morning, when his volunteer badge stopped opening the back door of the firehouse, when a supervisor who'd once clapped him on the shoulder couldn't meet his eyes. He felt it again at the station where his name had moved from the whiteboard to a file drawer marked pending. Captain Pike called him into the office just after noon. The blinds were half drawn, sunlight striping the desk like bars. Pike didn't offer a seat. "They filed a complaint," he said. "Private security firm. Claims you interfered with operations." Daniel leaned against the wall, hands loose. "I stayed within your boundaries." "You did," Pike said. "Which is why they're filing it anyway." Pike slid a folder across the desk. Inside were photos from the raid angles, chosen to make distance look like proximity moments, frozen to suggest intent. Daniel studied them without touching. "They're building a story," he said. "Yes," Pike replied, "and they're very good at it." Detective Hale knocked once and stepped in, jaw tight. "They're not just complaining," she said. "They're subpoenaing. Records, training logs, volunteer certifications." She glanced at Daniel. "Your life?" Daniel nodded. "They'll find nothing. They'll find leverage," Hale said. "Those aren't the same." Outside, the press had gathered again, cameras idling, reporters rehearsing seriousness. Pike watched them through the blinds. "This is bigger than the warehouse," he said. "Bigger than our county. The firm behind it has federal contracts, relief logistics, disaster response." Daniel felt the shape of it settle. The quiet power, the money that didn't look like money. "They don't want arrests," he said. "They want silence." Pike met his eyes. "They want you gone." Daniel thought of his son at school, of the promise he'd made. "Then do it," he said. "Cut me loose." Pike shook his head. "I won't," he said. "But I can't protect you from everything." The call came that evening, just as Daniel pulled into his driveway. An unfamiliar sedan sat across the street, engine running, lights off. His phone rang. Same smooth voice as before. "You had a busy night," the man said. "Messy." Daniel didn't look away from the sedan. "Say what you want." "We want to offer you something," the man continued. "Distance, safety, a consultancy, good pay. You disappear from our problem set." Daniel smiled without humor. "And if I don't?" A pause. then accidents keep happening, the man said gently, and people who don't need to be brave get hurt. Daniel ended the call. He waited until the sedan rolled away before he went inside. He didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table and watched the clock move its slow, inexorable inches. At 3:12 in the morning, he packed a bag he didn't take. At 4:45, he made coffee and left it untouched. At dawn, Hale showed up with a folder and a look that said she'd made a decision she didn't like. "We found something," she said. "Not proof. Pattern." They spread documents across the table. Shell companies nested like dolls. Boards overlapped. Donations flowed through charities that bloomed after storms and vanished before audits. Daniel traced lines with his finger, seeing what Hale couldn't yet name. "There's a center," he said, "not a headquarters. A trust." Hale frowned. "We don't have a name." Daniel leaned back. "You will," he said, "when you stop looking for criminals and start looking for executives." Pike joined them an hour later, tie-loosened eyes red. "We got pressure," he said. "State, federal. Everyone wants this to go away." Daniel stood. "Then let it," he said. Pike stared. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you can't win this the way you think," Daniel said. "They don't care about raids. They care about risk, about exposure." Hale crossed her arms. "You want to bait them." Daniel nodded. "You don't need me on a scene," he said. "You need me visible." They argued. Of course they did. About legality. About ethics. About whether it was fair to ask one man to stand in front of a machine built to grind people down. Daniel listened, then spoke once. "They already chose me," he said. "I'm just choosing how." By noon, a plan existed. It was thin. It was dangerous. It was legal enough. That afternoon, a local paper ran a story with Daniel's photo, taken at the warehouse, rain streaking his face, headline, "Careful and Incomplete." Civilian consultant questioned in ongoing probe. The comments lit up fast, half praise, half suspicion. Daniel read none of them. The second call came at dusk. A different voice, older, measured. "Mr. Mercer," the man said. "This is Alan Cross. I'm the chief executive of Cross Point Response." He paused, letting the name do its work. "We should talk." Daniel stepped out onto the porch, air, cooling cicadas waking. About misunderstandings," Cross said. "About the value of experience. About how we can help each other." Daniel imagined him in an office high above a city that didn't get muddy. "You can help by telling your people to stop," Daniel said. Cross chuckled softly. "You're principled," he said. "That's admirable. And expensive." They met the next morning in a glass conference room that smelled like lemon polish and power. Cross was tall, silver-haired eyes, bright with confidence, earned by surviving rooms like this. He gestured to a chair. Daniel didn't sit. "I don't like bullies," Cross said conversationally. "They lack imagination. I prefer incentives." Daniel looked out at the city below, traffic threading patterns that pretended to be free. "Your incentives hurt people," he said. Cross spread his hands. "Systems do," he said. "We manage them." Daniel turned. "You use disasters to move money," he said. "You use uniforms to move people. And when someone notices you erase them." Cross's smile thinned. "You're overreaching." "Am I?" Daniel said. "Or am I inconvenient?" Silence hung. Cross studied him with new interest. "You know, he said I could end this. A call. A donation. Your name disappears." Daniel nodded. "And the next, Claire," he said. "The next, Sarah. They disappear too." Cross sighed, genuinely regretful. "You don't understand how this works." Daniel leaned in just enough. "I understand leverage," he said, "and I understand timing." He left without shaking hands. By evening the phone rang again. Not Cross, a reporter, then another. Hale texted a single word. "Got him." Pike called at 9:30. "We found the trust," he said. "Offshore. Clean enough to look innocent, dirty enough to indict." Daniel sat on the couch, his son's head heavy against his shoulder. "Good," he said. Outside a car idled, then drove on. Daniel watched it go, heart steady. He didn't feel victory. He felt the weight of what came next, and the quiet certainty that whatever it would cost him before it cost anyone else. The arrest didn't happen in handcuffs at dawn. It happened in a boardroom at 11:20 in the morning, under lights too bright for secrets. Daniel watched it on a muted screen in Captain Pike's office, the footage already looping, already being framed by other people's words. Alan Cross stood from his chair when the agents entered, straightened his jacket, and nodded like a man greeting colleagues. The nod vanished when the warrant was read. Pike shut the screen off. "They're calling it a financial probe," he said. "That's how it starts." Daniel leaned back, eyes on the blank wall. "That's how it survives." Outside the station hummed. Phones rang. Doors opened and closed. Hale paced phone pressed to her ear, voice low and sharp. "No," she said. "You can't spin this. Not today." She ended the call and exhaled. "He's talking," she said. "Not confessing. But he's giving names." Daniel felt the room breathe. He didn't smile. He didn't relax. He'd learned not to trust the first drop after a drought. "They'll try to narrow it," he said. "Make it look like one bad executive." Pike nodded. "They always do." The door opened. Claire rolled in under her own power now, a cane tapping soft punctuation on the tile. She wore plain clothes and stubbornness, eyes bright with a fire that hadn't dulled. "You did it," she said to Daniel. He shook his head. "They did," he said, meaning Pike Hale. The people who had stayed inside the lines and still pushed them outward. Claire studied him, then looked to Pike. "They won't stop," she said. "They never do." Pike met her gaze. "No," he said, "but they'll think twice." The news broke wide by noon. Names, charts, explainers. The story grew, arms and legs walked into living rooms that had never heard of a service road or a river warehouse. By afternoon, Daniel's phone buzzed with messages he didn't open. By evening it went quiet again. That was when the quiet became dangerous. Daniel drove home as the sky bruised purple, a storm threatening but undecided. He took the long way, doubled back, once watched reflections in storefront glass. At the turn onto his street, he slowed. A pickup idled at the curb 2 houses down. Engine running. No lights. He passed it without looking. Inside, his son sat at the table, homework spread like a small war. "You're late," the boy said. Not accusing, just precise. "I know," Daniel said. He set his keys down. He didn't hang them. They ate in silence. Forks scraped. The refrigerator hummed. When the dishes were done, Daniel checked the locks twice. The boy watched him, then spoke. "Are they mad at you?" Daniel considered the truth, then chose the shape of it. "Some people don't like when rules catch up to them," he said. The boy nodded, satisfied enough. "I don't like bullies," he said. "Neither do I," Daniel said. A knock came just after 9. 3 sharp taps. Daniel didn't flinch. He stood slow, placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "Stay here," he said. He opened the door. Harla stood on the porch, rain starting to fall, hair pulled back tighter than usual. "We've got a problem," she said. Daniel stepped aside. She came in, eyes scanning corners like habit. "Cross's counsel filed a motion," she said. "Emergency injunction. Claims misconduct. They want you named." Daniel exhaled. "Of course they do." "They're fishing," Hale said. "They want to discredit the investigation by discrediting you." Daniel glanced towards the table. His son pretended not to listen, listening anyway. "What do you need?" Daniel said. Hale met his eyes. "I need you not to talk," she said. "Not to anyone, not to the press. Let us work." Daniel nodded. "I can do quiet. The pickup down the street left sometime after midnight." Daniel watched from the dark, breath slow. When sleep came, it was thin and restless. The next days blurred, depositions scheduled, subpoenas issued. More names surfaced, then vanished behind statements that said nothing. Daniel stayed home. He cooked. He walked his son to school. He answered no calls. He felt the pressure build like weather. On the 4th day, Pike came alone. He stood in the doorway, like a man carrying news he didn't want to deliver. "They're cutting deals," he said. "Mid-level. Enough to look like progress." Daniel nodded. "And the center," he said. Pike hesitated. "They're circling it," he said. "But it's slippery." Daniel thought of Cross's smile, the glass room, the word incentives. "He won't fall on his own," Daniel said. Pike studied him. "No," he said, "but someone else might push." The push came from an unexpected place. A woman named Sarah Collins, the accountant from the warehouse, sat down with Hale and didn't get up for 8 hours. She brought spreadsheets and fear and a memory for details that didn't forgive. By the time she finished, the trust had a face, and that face had a name beyond Cross. The warrant landed heavy and late. This time the arrest came with cameras and questions that couldn't be smoothed. The room went still when the name was read. A donor. A pillar. A man whose photo hung at fundraisers. The fallout hit like a wave. Resignations. Apologies. A governor's statement that used words like disappointed. Daniel watched it on mute again, his son's head against his shoulder. "Is it over?" the boy asked. Daniel considered the arc of things. "No," he said. But it's different now. The injunction failed. The complaint withered. The quiet returned, this time earned. Weeks passed. The station moved on. New faces filled old chairs. Claire returned to work on limited duty cane, retired to a corner. She stopped by Daniel's house one evening with a pie and an awkward smile. "I don't bake," she said. Someone else did. Daniel took it. "Thank them for me." They sat on the porch as dusk settled. "You could have left," Claire said. "A dozen times." "I know," Daniel said. "Why didn't you?" Daniel watched his son through the window, laughter flashing as he argued with homework. "Because leaving would have been easier," he said. "And easier isn't always right." The next morning, Daniel stood in line at the grocery store, and nobody stared. The news cycle had moved on. That was its mercy. At the station, Pike cleared his desk of files with Daniel's name on them and slid one across. "This day's closed," he said. "Unless you want it open." Daniel pushed it back. "Keep it closed." Pike smiled, tired and genuine. "You changed how my people think," he said. "That doesn't show up on reports." Daniel shrugged. "They already knew," he said. "They just needed a reminder." That night, Daniel took the service road again alone, drove slow windows down. The creek ran calmer now, water reflecting a moon that didn't care. He stopped where it had begun and listened to the quiet he'd fought for. When he drove home, the pickup wasn't there. The road was empty. The storm had passed, and for the first time in weeks, Daniel believed it. The quiet after a storm has a sound of its own. Daniel heard it in the mornings, when he opened the door, and the air didn't flinch in the evenings, when the road outside his house stayed empty past dark. The danger had receded, not vanished the way floodwater leaves behind silt you still have to shovel. Life didn't snap back. It eased. He went back to small things first, fixing the loose step on the porch, replacing a headlight, cooking dinners that took longer than necessary just to smell something other than coffee and rain. His son noticed. "You're home more," the boy said one night. Spoon paused over a bowl. "I'm trying," Daniel said. The station called less. When it did, it was about training schedules and paperwork questions that didn't carry urgency like a weapon. Daniel answered what he could and let the rest ring. He didn't need to be everywhere anymore. That was the point. A week later, Claire stood at the back of the training room, arms folded, watching him talk to a dozen deputies about bleeding control and decision fatigue. He spoke without raising his voice, hands demonstrating pressure and angles or words chosen for people who would have to remember them at 3 in the morning. He didn't tell stories. He didn't have to. The room leaned in anyway, after she waited until the chairs were stacked and the room smelled like sweat and antiseptic. "You're good at this," she said. Daniel wiped his hands. "It's teachable," he said. She smiled. "That's what scares people." He watched her walk away, cane long gone, gait still careful. He was glad she was careful. The letter arrived on a Tuesday thick envelope return address, a firm in a city that didn't slow for weather. Daniel opened it at the table, while his son did homework, the paper heavy with language designed to look neutral. It was an invitation to testify, not a summons. Polite, strategic. He folded it once and set it aside. His son looked up. "Bad mail." "Complicated mail," Daniel said. The hearing room was smaller than he expected. Wood paneling, a clock that ticked too loud. Daniel sat alone at the table when his name was called, oath taken, questions measured. He answered simply. Dates, times, boundaries. He did not volunteer. He did not speculate. When they tried to bait him into heroics, he declined the hook. A man in a tailored suit leaned forward. Mr. Mercer, he said, do you consider yourself an authority on law enforcement operations? No, Daniel said. Yet you advised them. I answered questions, Daniel said. They made decisions, and you benefited from that relationship, the man pressed. Daniel met his gaze. No, he said. They did. The room shifted. The clock kept ticking. Afterward, Hale met him in the hall, relief loosening her shoulders. You did fine, she said. Daniel nodded. It wasn't about me. That's why it worked, she said. At home, the boy waited with a question he'd rehearsed. Are you in trouble now? He asked. Daniel knelt to eye level. No, he said. I told the truth. The boy considered that like a math problem. That usually helps, he said. It did. The case moved forward without him. Names rose and fell. The firm dissolved into quieter shapes. Crosspoint rebranded. That was how systems survived. Daniel watched from a distance and didn't let the bitterness root. He'd learned what it cost. One afternoon, a woman knocked on his door with a clipboard and a look that mixed nerves and determination. I heard you teach, she said. My husband had a heart attack last year. We didn't know what to do. Daniel listened. He always listened. By the end of the week, there were 6 names on a list, then 12. They met in the high school gym on borrowed mats, learning hands and breaths and pressure. Daniel taught them to keep their voices steady, to move when their bodies wanted to freeze. He watched fear turn into something else and recognized it. Claire came once, stood in the doorway, eyes soft. Pike came later, stayed 10 minutes, nodded, and left. No speeches, no cameras. The service road grew grass again. The creek ran clear enough to see stones. Daniel drove it less often. When he did, it was with the windows down, radio low, the world ordinary and good. The night the storm returned, it was smaller summer thunder rolling and passing without consequence. Daniel sat on the porch with his son, counting seconds between flash and sound. 4, the boy said. That's far. Still loud, Daniel said. The boy leaned against him. Do you miss it? He asked. Daniel knew what he meant. Sometimes, he said. But I like this better. Weeks later, Claire called with news that wasn't urgent. She'd been promoted. She sounded surprised by it. I'm supposed to run a unit, she said. Me. You earned it, Daniel said. I had help, she replied. So did everyone who made it home, Daniel said. On the first cool morning of fall, Daniel stood at the edge of the schoolyard and watched his son run to join a game, laughter sharp and free. He felt the old reflex to scan, to count exits, and let it pass. He breathed in leaves and distant engines, a life stitched together from ordinary things. That evening he took the letter from the drawer and burned it in the sink. watched the words curl and blacken. He didn't need it anymore. The future would find him without formal invitations. When he went to bed, the house settled around him familiar creaks and sighs. He slept through the night, not because the world had become safe, but because he had learned where he belonged in it. The phone rang at 6:30 in the morning, piercing the quiet kitchen, where Daniel poured coffee and watched the fog lift over the hills. He didn't recognize the number. He let it ring once, then answered. "Mercer." "Morning," a smooth voice said. "We've got a situation. You're invited." Daniel didn't respond. "Details on your desk in 45 minutes, the voice continued, before hanging up. He leaned against the countercup, heavy in his hand, the steam fogging the glass for a second before it cleared. His son shuffled in shoes, dragging on the tile. "Who was that?" he asked. "Someone who knows better than to waste words," Daniel said. "Eat your cereal." The envelope arrived by 9. Thick, crisp, anonymous, except for a return address. He recognized cross-point response. Inside a folder, neatly stacked, labeled Northern Route 8 p.m. Observation, photos, coordinates, schedules, foot traffic. Nothing explicit about the targets. The handwriting was precise, sterile. Someone who wanted control without taking responsibility. Daniel folded the folder and set it next to the coffee. "They want me to watch," he said aloud. Not ask. Watch. Not participate. By 8, Pike was waiting at the corner of the service road in his SUV. Hoyle drove silent hands tight on the wheel. Daniel climbed in quiet, the envelope unopened on his lap. "You sure about this?" Pike asked. "I'm sure about myself," Daniel said. "Not about them." They drove north, gravel crunching under tires, forest pressing against windows, low mist curling around the trees. Hale's eyes flicked to Daniel in the rearview mirror, caught the tension in his shoulders. "You haven't told anyone about last night," she said. "I didn't need to," Daniel said. "They'd think it's a story." The warehouse sat where it had the night before. Same angles, same river hum. Lights off. Still. Quiet. Daniel felt the shape of the building before he saw it. He could hear how the walls breathed in the fog. Pike parked 50 yards out. "Teams are in position," he said. "Nothing moves until you say." Daniel opened the folder. Photos of crates stacked too high, diagrams of entry points, footwear impressions. He traced them with a finger. "They'll split," he said. "One decoy, one real exit." Hale swallowed. Again, Daniel didn't answer. He just counted the time. Each second carried a weight, every detail alive. "They know someone watches," he said finally. "They'll take the bait. They always do." The SUV door opened. Pike gestured. Daniel stepped out. Fog curled around him. Boots pressed into mud. The night smelled of wet leaves and diesel tension rolling over it like thunder. Hale stayed in the vehicle. Pike remained near the road. Radio-pressed eyes scanning. Daniel moved toward the edge of the warehouse yard, slow. He counted shadows and lights that weren't lights, listened to sounds that didn't belong. He froze when a truck shifted on the far dock engines, low, idling. 3 figures emerged, hands in pockets, casual, but careful. They knew someone was observing. Their movements were disciplined, almost rehearsed. Daniel dropped low, leaned against a tree, watched them. One carried a crate. One checked the perimeter. The third paused, sniffing the air like an animal. He counted his heartbeat with his breathing. Patience was the weapon here. A flashlight hit the tree line. Daniel stayed still. One of the men cursed softly. "It's here," he said, not loud enough for the others. Daniel didn't flinch. He waited. The beam wandered past him. "Good. Keep walking." Daniel counted again. 1, 2, 3. Then a woman screamed. Not a shout, not fear. Panic. Quick, sharp. Daniel moved instinctively towards it, low, pressing against the shadow of a container. Another beam swept past him. He froze, let the beam pass, counted seconds, then sprinted. Mud sucked at his boots. He reached the woman, Claire Hudson, hands shaking hair, plastered eyes, wide and fierce. She'd been hiding bound, her shirt damp with what wasn't rain. "Quiet," he hissed. "Follow my lead." He cut the ropes first. 1, 2. Her body went slack. He pulled her close, whispered instructions to move. "Stay low. Breathe." Shots rang out from the far end of the dock. He counted them. No one hit. Not yet. They split. Daniel pushed Claire to the left, the path he had predicted. She stumbled, caught herself on his shoulder. Her grip was strong iron under her panic. Pike's voice cut through his ear. "2 suspects to the east moving now. Stay out of sight." Daniel nodded without moving his lips. He adjusted Claire's shoulders, guided her through shadows. Every step measured, every footfall a calculation. She whispered her thanks, and he didn't respond. The night required silence, focus control. The decoy truck moved. Engines cough, lights flicker. Daniel pressed Claire against a crate, waited for the shadow to pass. Her breath came fast but steady. He touched her shoulder lightly. "Look at me," he said. She did. He counted. 1, 2, 3. Go. They ran low across gravel, pressed by shadows, and light that tried to lie. Daniel felt the old rhythm return, years buried under orders and fear. Claire stumbled once he steadied her. The other ran ahead, slipping between containers, melting into darkness. They reached the creek, water swollen from the fog and rain. Daniel stepped first, then guided Claire behind him. The current tugged at them both, strong enough to unbalance but not to stop. He adjusted her grip, her feet, her balance, whispering numbers. Step. Step. Don't slip. Don't look back. Pike's team emerged from cover, guns lowered, eyes sharp. Hale followed, radio in hand, silent command. Daniel counted until all the pieces matched. The decoy was caught. The real targets disappeared into the river mist. Claire was safe. Daniel exhaled for the first time in hours. He scanned the dark, the sound of the creek, the hum of engines far off. No celebration. Nothing for him. The danger had moved. He had controlled it, measured it, survived it. Claire leaned on him, one hand gripping his sleeve. "You saved me," she said. Not a question, not a whisper. Just the words. "I kept you alive," Daniel said. "That's all." By the time they returned to the SUV, the first light of morning tinted the horizon gray-blue. Daniel didn't speak. Hale didn't speak. Pike's hands rested on the wheel, still alert. The road was quiet. The creek behind them ran free. At home, Daniel let the truck idle a moment. His son had left for school. The house was silent, except for the hum of electricity. He took a deep breath, felt it settle like the water in the creek. The danger wasn't gone. It had moved, shifted, but it had a new edge now measured accounted for. He entered the house, closed the door, leaned against it for a second. The envelope from Crosspoint was gone. The call from unknown numbers faded into memory. His hands were clean, his pulse finally slowing. He didn't need sleep yet. Not really. He watched the shadows lengthen, the fog retreat, the first sun touch the hills. Tomorrow it would begin again. But tonight, the world felt like it had waited for him, and for once, he had won the pause. He moved to the kitchen, poured coffee. Steam rose, twisting in the sunlight. The ordinary smells of toast syrup and rain clinging to boots filled the room. Daniel held the cup, felt its heat. The world was fragile, layered with danger and quiet. But the people he cared for, the ones who mattered, were still here. He sat, drank, and listened to the hum of life. The late afternoon sun cut across the valley in thin gold slivers, brushing the rooftops of the small town like it was trying to wake the world, slowly, carefully. Daniel stepped out onto the porch, the wind carrying the smell of damp leaves and distant smoke from someone burning brush. His son was in the yard, tossing a football to himself, shadows stretching long across the grass. Daniel watched him, chest tight but steady, the weight of nights like the one at the warehouse, pressing down and lifting in the same motion. He had survived. She had survived. They were both still here. Claire arrived just as the sun tipped over the hills, walking along the gravel path that led from the station to his house. She carried a folder bulging with reports, spreadsheets and logs that mapped every route, every transaction, every carefully plotted step of the group they had pursued. Her hair was damp from the drizzle eyes, bright, steady, fierce, even in the soft light. "It's all here," she said, voice low but firm. "Every movement, every pattern. It's clear now." Daniel nodded, taking the folder from her hands and setting it on the table outside, sun reflecting off the edges of paper like miniature mirrors. They didn't speak for a moment, watching the shadows of the trees twist across the yard, the boys' laughter echoing faintly from the other side of the fence. Daniel's hands itched the old reflex of counting, measuring, preparing. He resisted it. The world was still fragile, but he had a buffer now, a space to breathe without being hunted, without needing to anticipate the next move that might mean someone's death. "Are you going to turn it over to Pike?" Daniel asked, nodding toward the folder. Claire shook her head. "Not yet. Not until the patterns are double confirmed. We don't want anyone slipping through. We do this carefully." She crouched slightly, brushing a leaf off the folder. Her movements were deliberate, trained, exact. Daniel could see the discipline in her, the same discipline he had recognized in the warehouse when she had survived by inches. He picked up a sheet and traced a line with his finger, following a route no one had considered for months. "They never expected the river route to be clear in this season," he said. "It's good for observation, bad for escape. I can mark it for surveillance, set eyes without alerting them." Claire smiled faintly. "You still see things no one else does?" "I've done this too long," he said. voice low almost to himself. Too many years counting too many nights like last week. But that doesn't matter anymore. He folded the sheet back into the folder and set it in the shade. Pike's call came through mid-afternoon. Daniel listened without moving, keeping one eye on his son as the boy kicked the football across the yard. Pike's voice was terse but controlled. "We've coordinated with federal oversight. They've acknowledged the chain. They're moving to freeze assets. They want me to thank you personally, but you know better than that." Daniel exhaled, letting the wind carry the sound. "I know." He set the phone down, weightless and heavy all at once. His son ran past, shirt wet with sweat, shouting something about a touchdown. Daniel's lips twitched in the faintest smile. Ordinary life. The safest, hardest kind of life. Evening fell with a soft, wet grey. The air smelled of pine and rain-soaked earth. Daniel moved inside, letting the door close with a firm click behind him. Claire followed, setting the folder on the counter, lingering for a moment. "Tomorrow we begin the next phase," she said. Her tone was serious but not tense, a calm wrapped around steel. Daniel leaned against the counter, watching her. "I'm done being the one they rely on for immediate survival," he said. "I'll guide, teach, advise, but I won't step back into the night they're expecting me in." She nodded, eyes softening. "You've earned that choice." Night came, and the house settled. Daniel checked locks, windows, doors. The weight of the world was still outside, but inside walls contained what mattered. The boy slept in his room, exhausted, blissfully unaware of the precise chaos that had hovered over their lives. Daniel poured himself a cup of coffee, strong, bitter grounding. He moved to the living room, reclined in a chair, eyes tracing the dim lines of the room in the lamplight. He thought of Pike and Hale of Clare, and every officer who had trusted him without fully understanding what he could do. He thought of the warehouse, the river, the shots that hadn't found their mark, the invisible trails he had followed with Claire at his side. And he thought of his son. The phone buzzed once. A text from Hale mission brief, tomorrow preparatory meeting at the station. Daniel read it, then deleted it. Some messages weren't meant to be answered. Not yet. Not by him. He stepped outside again, dark, cool, settling over the porch. The river ran quietly in the distance, reflecting light from the few houses scattered along the hills. Daniel let the night fold around him, the way it always did, after chaos, the way it always promised tomorrow, even when danger had whispered too close. He stayed there a long moment, letting it soak in, letting it solidify, letting the fear and relief mix into something like peace. At last he went inside, shut the door, and walked past his son's bedroom to the kitchen. The envelope from Cross Point sat on the counter unopened. Daniel left it there, knowing some battles didn't need his hand anymore. He poured another cup of coffee, set it on the table, and finally sat down. Claire returned for a brief moment, just to leave the folder, where Daniel could see it without opening. She nodded an unspoken acknowledgement of survival strategy and patience. "You've done enough for tonight," she said quietly. Daniel didn't reply, just watched the steam rise from his cup. He let the house breathe, let the night linger, let the weight ease. The quiet was earned, temporary, but real. He took a long sip, letting warmth spread from his chest, and for the first time in weeks allowed himself to feel the edges of safety. He stood and looked out the window, seeing shadows stretch long across the yard, moonlight catching the tops of the hills. His son stirred slightly in his sleep, soft murmurs and shifting limbs. Daniel smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, letting the small human things anchor him. The news cycle would churn tomorrow. The investigation would move forward. Agencies would argue. Plans would be adjusted. Daniel had no illusions about the future. There would always be risk, always new chaos to measure and manage. But tonight was quiet, real, measured, ordinary, in a way he had learned to treasure. He poured the last of the coffee into a thermos, placed it on the counter, and stretched muscles tense from hours of waiting and anticipation. He walked past the living room, past the bedrooms, past the empty chairs and silent lamps. Outside, a car passed slowly, heights dim, engine low. Daniel didn't flinch. He had already mapped it, already counted it, already decided it didn't matter. He returned to the kitchen, took one final sip from his cup, and set it down. Fingers lingering on the rim, breath slow. He allowed himself a moment of satisfaction, a moment that belonged to him alone. Daniel knew tomorrow would demand vigilance, judgment, and resolve again. But tonight he would rest. And when he did, he would remember why he had survived, why she had survived, why his son needed him. He would remember that courage wasn't about recognition, applause, or medals. It was about showing up when it counted, acting when inaction would cost lives, and choosing integrity over fear. He glanced at the folder from Claire one last time, at the thermos at the quiet house. He allowed himself a brief smile. Outside the night deepened, steady and patient, like it had learned to wait. If you believe in courage that never quits in ordinary people doing extraordinary things, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment Real Hero to share your thoughts.